I'm very proud that UNESCO is a co-organizer of this entire conference, and I attribute this session in particular to an objective that we developed very early on in the proceedings. We believe the issue of the revitalization of the humanities is not just about funding or political will purely. It is about also making sure that the communities come together. One of our key endeavors has been to ensure that the community of academics and researchers is in constant interaction with decision makers, with the policy makers who really should have no excuse for not taking the evidence that is presented by these communities and for making sure that we have sound policies that speak to the objectives of social justice, of equality, and of course, the vision that we all have for a better world. And in this regard, we're delighted that we have 4 participants today who are all core UNESCO participants, I would say, who have between them been at the edge of this discussion, certainly in UNESCO and in their own countries. I am delighted to introduce them. Again, you have the names, but their excellencies are 3 ambassadors. We will go one by one. Ambassador Karam of Lebanon, Ambassador Keita from Mali, Ambassador Veer from the Netherlands, and then the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Maynard, who is the Secretary General of the National Commission for UNESCO of St. Kitts and Nevis. 4 regions who have all been engaged, 3 through preparatory conferences for the World Humanities Conference, and the view, I think, from each dimension of both combining a thematic priority and the regional perspective that I know will add up to a rich discussion. The format will be as follows. I will invite the gentlemen to make a short opening statement that encapsulates their view, 7 to 10 minutes, and we will then open up to a discussion with all of you and with the participants. And I will start with Ambassador Keita. The World Humanities Conference has a very solid representation by Africa, African scholars, African institutions, and this was by design, of course. But we are also very keen that we translate the outcome of the conference to the concrete agenda that we have ahead of us, and perhaps you can help us understand with specific reference to the context of Mali, which has long been a champion, of course, hosted an important preparatory conference, and I think will help us carry this through. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Madame la Directrice générale adjointe, Monsieur le Président de la Conférence mondiale des humanités, Excellences, Messieurs les ambassadeurs, honorable assistance, je remercie très chaleureusement les organisateurs de la Conférence mondiale des humanités pour avoir donné au Mali la chance, oui, la chance, l'immense chance d'abriter la Conférence africaine des humanités. La forte mobilisation des intellectuels du continent prouve, si besoin en était, le grand engouement de la communauté scientifique et universitaire à cet événement majeur. Aussi, l'implication du personnel du chef de l'État, manifestée de diverses formes, est la preuve la plus illustre de l'intérêt du Mali. Qu'il se tienne à Bamako, la Conférence africaine des humanités est dans l'ordre normal des choses quand on connaît la tradition humaniste qui a fondé cette ville cosmopolite au cœur d'une Afrique tout aussi imprégnée du même humanisme. Cette conférence est tenue à un moment où mon pays est au cœur des questionnements du monde et s'interroge lui-même. Le monde entier s'interroge avec souvent beaucoup d'inquiétudes sur les extrémismes qui, ces derniers temps, se sont manifestés par moments façon fort étonnante. La horde djihadiste qui s'est emparée du nord du Mali a voulu détruire la mémoire, raser le passé, remettre en cause la cohésion sociale. Cette tolérance qui a ébranlé la quiétude des populations maliennes a surpris le monde Personne ne reconnaît plus le Mali, cette heure de paix, d'humanisme soudanien prononcé. Oui, le monde entier s'interroge et s'inquiète, mais aussi le Mali lui-même et les Maliens eux-mêmes. Et c'est là la quintessence de tout notre propos. Les manuscrits de Tombouctou que vous avez abordés avec brio lors de vos travaux sont la source d'un faisceau de valeurs qui ont traversé les âges jusqu'à nous. Ils nous enseignent les confrontations élégantes et savantes d'intellectuels qui ont enrichi leur époque et planté les jalons de la nôtre. Les codes de la bonne tenue, de la cohabitation, les principes de la diversité culturelle et de la liberté de pensée étaient abondamment discutés à l'université de Sankoré. Et qui mieux que Ahmed Baba pour perpétuer jusqu'à nous ces valeurs qui de nos jours trouvent écho dans nos préoccupations majeures de tous les jours. La ville interdite aux non-musulmans, au nom d'une intolérance circonstancielle, a pourtant été visitée par des chrétiens, voire des juifs qui l'ont portée à des échelles où elle se trouve. La charte du Kouroukanfouka n'est pas une proclamation théorique, comme l'a fait la paix de Fès, obtenue 81 ans plus tard du prince de Liège. La charte du Mandé est un vécu qui a codifié les relations humaines et politiques, nous donnant la source de ce que l'humanité appellera les droits de l'homme des siècles plus tard. Que dire de la parenté à plaisanterie, cette pratique sociale qui, par le biais de la licence langagière, permet de se dire la vérité sans se fâcher entre groupes ethniques, entre familles, entre patronymes. C'est cela, et tout cela le Mali. Si les terroristes ont reçu leur propagande politique en démolissant mausolées et bibliothèques, ils ont fort heureusement échoué à ébranler les fondements du Mali, cousus au fil de fer par une communauté de destin liant les Maliens. Le Mali est conscient du rôle éminent que jouent les sciences humaines dans la posture actuelle, ces populations du Nord et du Sud, en passant par le centre. C'est pourquoi le chef d'État a accueilli très favorablement l'organisation de la Conférence africaine des humanités à Bamako en lui donnant un cachet particulier. Il a tenu personnellement à saluer tous les participants à la conférence et à réitérer son engagement à faire un espace d'échange, de partage, de dialogue pérenne. Le président de la République, son Excellence Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, a tenu à concrétiser son engagement en faisant notre compatriote, notre compatriote Adama Samasekou, conseiller spécial qui va se consacrer sur les humanités. Cette communauté de destin trouve son origine non seulement dans ce passé glorieux, partagé mais dans la philosophie soudananienne et rendu par Amadou Hampâté-Bâ. Certes qu'il s'agisse des individus, des nations, des races ou des cultures, nous sommes tous différents les uns des autres, mais nous avons tous quelque chose de semblable aussi. Et c'est cela qu'il faut chercher pour pouvoir se reconnaître en l'autre et dialoguer avec lui. Alors nos différences, au lieu de nous séparer, deviendront complémentaires et source d'enrichissement mutuel. Que de même que la beauté d'un tapis tient à la variété de ses couleurs, la diversité des hommes, des cultures et des civilisations fait la beauté et la richesse du monde. Combien ennuyeux et monotone serait un monde uniforme où tous les hommes, calqués sur un même modèle, penseraient et vivraient de la même façon, n'ayant plus rien à découvrir chez les autres. Comment s'enrichirait-on en soi-même? Belle philosophie rappelée à justice hier par Adama Samasekou. C'est justement en raison de cet héritage que le Mali a répondu dès le lancement des préparatifs de cette conférence. Il a été présent à la journée Debout citoyen, tenue ici même à Liège, le 10 septembre, en écho, en retentissant opuscule « Indignez-vous » de Stéphane Hessel. Aussi, mon pays a coordonné avec l'UNESCO et l'ensemble des États membres africains la résolution 201 et X37, appuyant de façon forte, certes, la renaissance des humanités, s'il faut parler ainsi. Mon pays demeure convaincu que l'avenir de l'humanité est encore et encore dans les humanités. Il nous faut faire des humanités pour prévenir l'hécatombe que sera le retour de la pensée unique ou le triomphe des extrémismes. Faisons de l'espoir que représente le Jemgo Bulomba, symboliquement planté dans les jardins du palais de Liège, la sève nourricière de notre action pour qu'à partir de cet instant, les nouvelles humanités que nous lançons donnent leur essence au slogan de l'UNESCO qui veut que, dans l'esprit des hommes, soit être élevée la défense de la paix. Le Mali appelle vivement à cet effet à donner une suite à la Conférence mondiale des humanités pour que cet espoir né de nos enthousiasmes ici reste entretenu pour toujours. En terminant, je voudrais sincèrement remercier la communauté liégeoise aux 167 nationalités pour la magnifique organisation de cette Conférence mondiale des humanités. Le monde à Liège vous sait gré de la chaleur, de l'accueil, de la convivialité, de l'humanisme de Liège. L'UNESCO n'est pas démarrée en reste. Depuis des années, elle a cru à ce projet initié par notre compatriote, le président du CHIPS, et elle a développé ses talents, son savoir-faire et ses ressources pour le faire aboutir. Merci à l'UNESCO pour nous avoir accompagnés. Merci le monde des humanités pour nous faire rêver encore d'un monde meilleur pour tous et chacun. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Ambassador. For the reminders, tolerance, social cohesion, identity, and cultural heritage as diversity. Important notes of, I think, benchmarks for us here today. And I know they have a great resonance with Lebanon also. I think a little country that has been at the center of many big storms. That has really stood steadfast in many of its global commitments, with flying colors despite the many, many constraints. And we are especially proud that Lebanon hosted in Byblos, a historic city, the Arab Regional Consultation, which brought together many distinguished academics and scholars from across the world to debate the status of the humanities in the Arab world. So we are delighted to have with us Ambassador Khalil Karam, who came especially this afternoon from Paris to participate in this panel.
Thank you, ADG Nada. I was expecting you to present us in French, since we are in Liège. Excellence, honorable assistance. Un article de la presse savante stipulait la semaine passée que pour faire face au terrorisme, il fallait revenir à Homère. S'il est vrai que la mondialisation à outrance a aggravé les crises qui nous interpellent, une part de responsabilité incombe au fait d'avoir négligé les humanités. Et d'ailleurs, mon collègue, l'ambassadeur, qui vient de parler des manuscrits de Tombouctou et que l'humanité serait éventuellement sauvée par les humanités, est tout à fait vrai. Consciente de l'urgence d'agir, la 201e session du Conseil exécutif de l'UNESCO a affirmé le rôle des humanités dans un monde en transition et leur tâche historique dans la lutte contre la xénophobie, l'intolérance et le fondamentalisme. Venant du Proche-Orient, nous ne pouvons que saluer la tenue à Liège de la Conférence mondiale de l'humanité. Nonobstant la complexité de la problématique sociétale dans notre région proche-orientale, il n'en demeure pas moins que les acteurs de la société civile sont tenus de mieux s'organiser pour encourager les décideurs à redonner aux humanités leur place naturelle dans les choix nationaux des États. Le programme MOST de l'UNESCO, depuis sa création, décortique les approches publiques insuffisantes en ce qui concerne l'apport financier aux humanités et la recherche scientifique concomitante. La négligence étant due à la domination de la mentalité marchande et à l'évaluation de l'utilité des formations en fonction de leur employabilité. En période de crise économique mondiale, les autorités de chaque État pourraient faire appel à des financements publics-privés, PP, afin de réhabiliter les sciences humaines. Car les sciences humaines répondent à des préoccupations existentielles qui vont au-delà de l'emploi et des revenus et sont supposées être présentes dans toutes les formations, même professionnalisantes. Les conflits qui frappent la planète nécessitent pour leur solution une connaissance des humains, des civilisations et des cultures les plus diverses. La révision des curricula scolaires et universitaires est essentielle dans cette réhabilitation. Le développement scientifique et technologique des pays devrait être un levier pour la réhabilitation des humanités et non pas le contraire. Les centres spécialisés de l'UNESCO, comme le CICH de Byblos qui vient d'être mentionné par Dr Nachef, ont un rôle incontournable pour la mise en œuvre de ces orientations, de même que pour mettre en valeur les défis régionaux. De plus, le 1er janvier 2016, les 17 objectifs de développement durable, ODD, à l'horizon 2030, sont entrés en vigueur. Bien que les objectifs de développement durable ne soient pas juridiquement contraignants, il est indubitable que les humanités ont un rôle central pour le suivi et l'examen des progrès accomplis par chaque État. Pour revenir au Petit Liban. Le Petit Liban avait une grande idée. Et on a pris conscience de l'importance des sciences humaines et sociales très tôt. Et avons commencé au milieu du siècle dernier à élaborer un projet pour la création d'un centre international pour les sciences de l'homme en coopération avec l'UNESCO. Mais les événements tragiques qui ont marqué le Proche-Orient ont retardé dans la réalisation de ce projet jusqu'à la fin du siècle dernier, ça veut dire en 1998, date à laquelle le centre a été créé. Un centre qui fonctionne actuellement sous l'égide de l'UNESCO et la tutelle du ministère de la Culture. La mise en œuvre des objectifs posés par cette conférence correspondent à ceux du centre. Ils sont stipulés dans l'accord international en vertu duquel il a été créé. Le ministère libanais de la Culture a examiné avec attention les recommandations adoptées par la conférence consultative régionale dont les travaux se sont déroulés au Centre international des sciences de l'homme à Byblos sur le thème « Sur la route de Liège » et notamment les propositions pour la reconsidération des sciences humaines et le renforcement de leur place dans la politique éducative libanaise sur les plans scolaires, universitaires et post-universitaires. Tout comme nous prendrons en considération les recommandations qui émaneront de notre conférence de Liège et nous nous efforcerons en coordination avec les ministères concernés au sein du gouvernement libanais de les intégrer dans la politique éducative, culturelle et sociale du pays. Et là, permettez-moi enfin de remercier les organisateurs parce que c'est vraiment une conférence, un projet titanesque. Donc tous les organisateurs, que ce soit au niveau de la province ou bien au niveau de l'UNESCO, sont vivement remerciés. Merci.
I like Titanic. We haven't used that adjective yet, but I think we should start. Thank you, Ambassador. I think a genuine testament to the commitment of Lebanon and in the continuing richness of academic and intellectual life in Lebanon, an influence that goes far beyond its borders, indeed even the region. I'm going to move to Ambassador Veer. Let me say at the outset, the ambassador has been a great champion of the human rights agenda at UNESCO, of philosophy, and the relationship to the humanities. And I think in these difficult times for Europe as well, it is interesting to consider how we can move forward and how the ambassador thinks we're going to be able to navigate this agenda once we get back into more familiar territory. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you all for coming. And I would like to start because the conference is almost over, to congratulate this conference and you all participants with the results. And I'd like to thank especially the university and the city of Liège for hosting this and to give us all a very warm welcome here in this beautiful city. I've been happy to participate the last 2 days, and I've been present at many lively discussions and I think really interesting exchange of thoughts. Thinking about what we could do, and as Nada referred to, I was the ambassador for human rights for the Netherlands before coming to Paris. And before becoming an ambassador or before becoming a diplomat, I was teaching philosophy of culture in the University of Amsterdam. So also these last days, I've been happy to combine things from the past with what I'm doing now. And I think we should try to think what can be the follow-up of this important conference. And for this, I would like to start with 3 quotes. One old quote from the early days of UNESCO in 1947, when UNESCO was giving input to what became known as the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. At that time, it was formulated when they were thinking about what do we do, fundamental rights, human rights, rights of man. And at the beginning, they were thinking more of an international declaration. But they came to name it a Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that is because they believed that this Universal Declaration would somehow put to words the fundamental norms and convictions shared by all men, however great the differences of culture and circumstances. Many years later, in 2011, when the first World Humanities Forum was held in Busan, in South Korea, the theme was universalism in a multicultural world. And this forum concluded that each society needs to achieve an appropriate balance between the necessary respect for diversity and the shared values without which diverse societies cannot live in peace and prosperity, and that the world as a whole needs to establish a renewed humanistic basis for universal values. And the last quote is from the outcome document of this conference, which refers back to an earlier meeting in Nagoya, where it says, "For a new foundation of the humanities, rooted in their responsibility in managing the human and cultural complexity of our societies within a plurality of world cultures." So why do I take these 3 quotes? To show you that it is, in a way, the debates on human rights, universality, what can humanities bring to this troubled world, in a way, what has been summoned up at one of the papers that was presented yesterday, what you see in the media presented as almost a clash of civilizations, which is often framed, of course, in a very negative way. We see, in a way, I think, we all try to put emphasis, and we like to do that, of course, the positive approach to common principles, shared values. But at the same time, you can ask yourself, if we have so much shared values and common principles and all these things that we cherish together, why should we have a clash of civilizations? What is there to clash about if we all have these common principles that we adhere to? And there, I think it's always this other part that is also mentioned in these 3 quotes that I quoted, that we have diversity on the other hand. We have plurality, and we somehow try to only talk about, to stress the common things, that we, in an indirect manner, maybe solve this diversity and bring it to unity again. In other words, we are very superficial in looking at what is common, and we sort of try to stay on the surface to avoid problems and then try to be optimistic. I think it's time that we take up the challenge to dig deeper into what is common and what do we share. And this, I think, is something that is very needed. Already in 1947, when UNESCO was working on this, UNESCO already sort of warned the Commission, under the leadership of Eleanor Roosevelt, which was writing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because the UNESCO committee at the time already said, what is needed is a more precise and detailed examination of the common principles that may be formulated in this declaration, and the philosophical differences that have divided man in the interpretation of these principles. This effort has to be undertaken to avoid future tensions and clashes. Now we're 70 years later. We can only say that this challenge put to the international community by UNESCO was never taken up. UNESCO was never asked to do this examination. Now 70 years have passed. The world has changed, as we all know, in an unthinkable manner when you were living in the 40s and the 50s. How can we think that the interpretation and the understanding of the values and principles declared universal at that time have remained unchanged? I think it's no longer enough to talk about it in future terms. Those tensions and clashes are here. And I think we somehow need to, what I said, start digging deeper in this common and shared values. And in the three quotes, you can also see that it's often referred to as we need new humanism, we need a new foundation. I think we should start sort of reformulating or updating what we were believed to share as common values, say some 70 years ago. And that could maybe then result in a new way of looking at humanism by sort of updating it rather than totally renewing it. And to conclude, I think it's something that the present Director General of UNESCO, Irina Bokova, when she started, was trying to do when she gave an important speech on new humanism. We all know that her mandate has been charged with many different problems which has nothing to do with content but more with management of the organization, which I regret very much, sort of made it unable for her to really follow up on this. But I would say when her mandate, as you know, will end in November, this should be one of the first new tasks and challenges for the new DG, to see how can we pick up this challenge, this request that was done already by UNESCO in 1947. And I think especially also if you look at this conference, you should look at the non-Western, say, input. Of course, when the Universal Declaration was written, there was also input from non-Western thinkers. I think countries like China and Lebanon have been very influential in the text that's now known as the Universal Declaration. But I think also what I've heard these days here in this World Humanities Conference, it is important that when we try to undertake such an update, we leave it, the initiative, to UNESCO together with, say, those countries where non-Western, say, traditional philosophies have sort of became more and more important over the last years. We all know that human rights are often now described by non-Western countries. Europe, we sometimes like to deny that, but I've been confronted a lot with this, that human rights are a Western concept. And I think it's a very dangerous road to go down. But if we want to stop that, we need to invite and need to challenge, so to say, those people who say, well, in my culture, the Asian culture, the African culture, the Latin American culture, there are different approaches to what you would call human rights. This is again about these principles. We should be able to challenge those people who say that, to give a positive input. So an input from the South into this debate on human rights and the universality of it. And I think this could be one of the important ways to follow up on this conference. And I think UNESCO could have a important role to play in it, and such an initiative would be very timely. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ambassador. One, for recalling all the milestones in history around which the common values and the shared values really came together, and we managed to grow as an international community. For the wisdoms from the veteran negotiations that you have been party to, the intergovernmental process, something I think we tend to forget, but these are quite complex processes, and they can hold us back or move us forward depending on the degree with which we engage. And perhaps one reminder, which is very important, that in this December 2017, we will kick off the celebrations for the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, which will conclude in December 2018. And I think it will be a great opportunity to try to advance some thinking on human rights and the humanities, particularly coming out of this conference. Thanks, Ambassador. Next is our Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Maynard, who has been very, very active in our executive board. And I'm thrilled he's here because the preparatory meeting that was conducted in Kingston was characterized by a very strong youth participation. I know this is a priority for St. Kitts and Nevis, which has with UNESCO done a very, almost a model national youth policy. But for the whole region, of course, and it would be very, very interesting to hear how this agenda of the humanities is relevant and can be embraced by young women and men, especially from the region.
Thank you very much, Madam ADG, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Antonio Maynard. I am the Secretary General for the St. Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO, a very small country in the Eastern Caribbean, 50,000 people. I am also the official representative on the UNESCO Executive Board representing my country. I am also a social scientist in my own right in my country. I want to give commendation to the UNESCO staff for partnering with all of these many partners in bringing this very important World Conference to fruition. Could you give the UNESCO staff a round of applause, please? John Cowley and Madam ADG. And in spite of the serious financial crisis that is happening presently at UNESCO. Ladies and gentlemen, the Caribbean sub-region, after experiencing over 400 years of slavery and colonialism, have created its own civilization. And I believe this should be a lesson for the world. A beautiful and friendly society. But as a consequence, and some might say, paradoxically, we are facing some very serious challenges, especially among our youths. In addition to climate change, that President Trump says is not happening, and the frequent occurrences of natural disasters. And these natural disasters usually wipe out an entire economy on our islands in a few hours. The Caribbean states are also faced with the serious issue of crime and violence amongst its youth, and especially amongst our young men. And of course, this is a phenomenon. And health issues such as obesity and mental illness. We are the most obese society in the world per capita. And some of our islands have the highest crime rate per capita in the entire world. I'm reluctant to call names, St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, St. Lucia, all of these brilliant civilization and nations independent nations are facing these challenges. Of course, some of our scholars blame this on slavery and is actively and legally seeking reparation. And maybe it's time for us to have a world conference on reconciliation and reparation. I believe that the solutions to our problems, though, lies with the young people themselves and the role they can play in promoting and embracing the humanities, especially in sports as a tool for development and empowerment, health, well-being, physical education, anti-doping, as well as youth empowerment. These are some niches and strategies that can solve the many problems that the young people in the Caribbean face, especially if they embrace the humanities. Their participation in lifelong quality education, especially in history and their cultural heritage, is going to be critical to the sustainable development of our Caribbean society and its young people. I am also afraid that the proliferation of the modern technologies are reaping havoc in or on the moral fabric of our society and our young people. With the social media phenomena is cutting both ways, and especially on the negative side in the psyche of our young people. But again, I believe there is hope. I'm sure you have heard about Usain Bolt, Bob Marley, just to name a few, who have championed the world in their skills and talents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. It's clear that these are critical social challenges, not just for the Caribbean, but again, a powerful reminder of what we need to tackle as humanities communities and which are the spheres in which we must make inroads, and we will not succeed until all segments of every society are fully integrated in this effort, especially young women and men. Thank you. Before we go to questions and answers, we also have very interesting, a short video, which is a message from the Prime Minister of Cape Verde to join us. So if we can listen to that, and then we will open up for more questions.
Gostaria de saudar a todos e de congratular com a realização da Conferência Mundial das Humanidades. É com grande satisfação que faço uso da palavra para vos dizer o quão importante é a contribuição das humanidades para a consolidação dos laços a nível familiar, nacional e internacional. O vosso combate para fazer o mundo um lugar melhor pelas ciências humanas é extremamente importante, ontem, hoje e no futuro. Como vossas excelências sabem, vivemos atualmente uma série de crises, às quais é importante e urgente responder de uma forma adequada. Estas respostas, acreditamos, devem advir de reflexões sobre valores culturais positivos, veiculados durante séculos por todos os continentes, porque cada cultura pode contribuir para enriquecer a outra. Está provado que ter em consideração a dimensão humana é um fator importante para formular qualquer tipo de políticas pertinentes. Aproveito a oportunidade para partilhar com vossas excelências que o meu país, Cabo Verde, realiza nos dias 17 a 20 de outubro, o 4º Fórum Mundial de Desenvolvimento Local na cidade da Praia. Depois da Espanha em 2011, do Brasil em 2013 e da Itália em 2015, é a vez de Cabo Verde acolher este importante evento mundial, onde iremos definir e desenvolver e discutir uma plataforma para todos os atores de desenvolvimento local sustentável. É a possibilidade de dialogar e de estabelecer alianças estratégicas para além dos espaços geográficos e regiões. Gostaria de contar com a vossa mobilização para assegurarmos uma boa participação, porque é um evento que se realiza pela primeira vez em África. É um desafio importante que temos que vencer juntos. É com esta nota de esperança que concluo a minha intervenção, desejando o sucesso que nós queremos almejar e perseguir no 4º Fórum Mundial de Desenvolvimento. Conto com a vossa participação na cidade da Praia. Muito obrigado.